All right, we've got multiplying and dividing integers with models. I am going to utilize a marker today and pencil to help just kind of organize our way through this. All right, so here we go. We have 3.4 and 3.4. Remember that dot is another symbol for multiplication. So the way that we read that is 3 times 4. Right, then we have a key. We're going to use an open circle for positive and then a shaded circle for negative, and then we'll see our zero pairs. I'm not really going to be using zero pairs today, more so focused on just what the counters are going to look like. All right, we're going to start with modeling the multiplication problems below. We have 2 times 4. So this is very similar to what you did in probably second or third grade when you learned how to multiply with your arrays. So we have two groups of positive 4. So I'm going to do that with columns. So one group is going to have 4 positives. The other group is going to have 4 positives, right? 1, 2. Two groups of 4 gives us positive 8. Our next one, we have two groups of negative 4. So I've got negative, so here's my first group. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. I have two groups of 4 negatives, so that gives me a total of negative 8. Same thing over here. I've got two groups of negative 5. So here's my first group. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. My second group of 5 for a total of negative 10 if I just count them. All right, but if 2 times 4 is 8 and 2 times negative 4 is negative 8, then what do you think negative 2 times negative 4 equals? All right, we're going to chat about this in class, but essentially, on this example up here, I have two groups of negative 4. So if I want to make that a negative two groups of negative 4, I'm going to flip it to the opposite. Right, so I would end up with a positive 8. So we're going to see in a little while where two negatives make a positive when we multiply and divide. So we can also see that down here with our division problems. 9 divided by 3. So if I take positive 9 and divide it by 3, I can take my 9 positives. There's my 9 positives. I'm going to divide them into 3 groups. 1, 2, 3. My answer would be a positive 3. My next one, I have negative 9 divided into 3 groups. So I'm going to do that with this marker. 1, 2, 3, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. So there are my 9 negatives split up into 3 groups. So my answer would be negative 3. Same thing over here. I've got 6 negatives split into 2 groups. Here are my 6 negatives split into 2 groups gives us negative 3. All right, so there we are with models. We also might sometimes see this done on a number line. So let's see, my number line is kind of blurry. I've got 0 marked right here in the middle, so I'm gonna kind of just put a line so I can see that a little better. 3 times 3, so 3 groups of 3. That's positive. So here's one group of 3. Here's 2 groups of 3. There's 3 groups of 3, and I end up with 9. Our next one, I have 5 groups of negative 1. So essentially, I'm just going to kind of like skip count. So here's my first group of negative 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I end up with negative 5. 2 groups of negative 3. Well, here's negative 3. There's another negative 3. So there's my 2 groups, and he ends up with negative 6. Now, all that being said, that's the model, right? When you first learned how to multiply or divide, you drew models. And then eventually you stopped drawing models because you understood what was happening. And that's essentially what we're going to do here. So we're going to go to something much more simple and abbreviated to help us remember what to do when we multiply and divide. And that is Mathman. Okay, sorry for my horrible singing, but here is Mathman, and he is our math superhero that helps us only when we are multiplying and dividing integers. If you called out for Mathman's help as you were falling from a burning building or something, and you were adding and subtracting integers, he would let you go splat on the concrete, because he only comes to your rescue if you multiply and divide positives and negatives. All right, so here is how we're going to utilize Mathman. Eventually, this will be something that you just do and you don't think about, but he is a tool that we call upon when we are multiplying and dividing integers. But here's the thing, the problem always starts out the exact same. Identify if you're working with a positive or a negative. So here we go. Positive or negative 10? Positive. Positive or negative 2? Negative. Okay, now here's how Mathman helps. I am multiplying a positive times a negative. All right, what are we left with? A negative. Right, I multiplied positive 10 times negative 2, which leaves us with a negative. And then 10 times 2 is 20. Our next one, same thing. I have a negative 10. I have a negative 2. We can use Mathman. I am multiplying a negative times a negative, which leaves us with positive. And then 10 times 2 is again 20. Same thing. I have a negative 10. A positive 2. I'm multiplying a negative times a positive, which leaves us with a negative 20. Same thing with division. Positive, negative. I'm taking a positive and dividing it by a negative, which leaves us with negative. And 10 divided by 2 is 5. Negative 10, negative 2. Negative divided by a negative is positive 5. Negative 10, positive 2. A negative divided by a positive is negative 5. All right, so there we go. All right, utilize Mathman, and eventually those rules will just be second nature. So we're going to kick it up a notch, because that can be fairly basic. So if we have a string of problems, a negative times a positive times a negative, what we're going to do in class is discuss how we can, at the snap of a finger, know whether or not we are going to end up with a final answer of positive or negative. So we can do one together. Nah, I don't want to give you any hints. I'm going to let you figure this out on your own. Let your brain work a little bit rather than me tell you what's going on. So we're going to leave this alone. You guys are going to do that in class. If you miss class, check in with a partner. Have them explain it to you. Your partner's brain will grow. Your brain will grow. Everyone's brain will grow. There we go. Multiplying and dividing integers. You can use Mathman. All right, there we go.